This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, and that is Bogie. All right.
Hey everybody, I'm Bogie. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. When I say it's an honor and a privilege to be at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking. I'm saying that because I don't get to go that often. I'm a musician for the last 2.5 years. I've been on the road constantly. My biggest break has probably been 6 weeks. And it's not always easy to get to meetings. And so when I can get to them out there, I damn sure do it. And sometimes there are meetings that if I were going to meetings on a regular basis, I would be like, man, this meeting sucks. But I'm telling you, I'm so starved for meetings. I go in there and even the worst meeting, I'm like, thank you, God, for this meeting. So it's you know, hopefully this one won't suck, but we'll see. So anyhow, we'll get the math out of the way. I'm going to be 35 this month. I was born May 23rd, 1972, and I got sober November 27th, 1990. I was 18 years old and had enough, you know, and I was pretty beaten up. And, you know, I say I had enough because when I got to the treatment center, they told me I had had enough. Not because I truly believed that I had had enough. I actually wanted a whole lot more. But what happened was, you know, my life had gone completely opposite of what it was, according to me, supposed to do. I grew up in Greenville, South Carolina. You might hear the accent here and there. Comes when I breathe really humid air, that's when it starts to really happen. When I was dating my wife, the first time I went back home, I literally got off the plane and called her, and she said, your accent's already back. And I was like, okay. So anyway, so I grew up in South Carolina and lived in North Carolina for many years as well, and then moved here in '97. But one of the things that was so prevalent in my family was anger. And, you know, alcoholism runs all through my family on both sides. And my father's mother, whom I love so much, has about 30 years now. And I remember, I think, well, I guess I would have been like 4 or 5 years old. Right before she got sober, I wrote a thank you note because I got a Christmas present or birthday present from her, and I wrote a thank you note. Apparently didn't meet the requirements of the typical Southern Belle family kind of thing. And she wrote me a letter back saying, basically, that thank you letter was not any good. You better write me back a proper thank you note. And I was like, damn, man, it's my grandma. So, you know, I think about that. Now, according to, you know, my father and my uncle and stuff, that's just the tip of the iceberg with her. I got to say, that's the tip of the iceberg with me. You know, I was a nightmare and a train wreck and just waiting to happen whenever I could. My folks divorced when I was like 4 or 5, and I lived with my mom, and you know, and then she got remarried, and so did my father, and I have 2 older sisters, and when my mom got remarried, I got 4 more older sisters, so I became the youngest and the only boy of 7. Now, you learn a few things about women in a house of 8 women. You learn how to treat them, and you learn how not to treat them. So my problem has always been that I confuse the two. So, you know, as my wife will attest to on occasion. But anyhow, I didn't want for much growing up as far as, you know, monetarily. I mean, my family was fine. You know, I was given plenty. Being the youngest and the only boy, I could manipulate the situation very well. And, you know, I didn't have any problems. But that wasn't what my head told me. You know, my head told me my family wasn't rich enough. My head told me I didn't have enough. I wasn't cool enough. This wasn't going to work for me. You know, where can I get some more of whatever everybody else thinks I should have? And that was really what it boiled down to for me. I'm also an asthmatic, and one of the early lessons I got about, you know, drugs and whatever was with asthma, my chest tightens up, I can't breathe, I don't feel very good. And then I hit the inhaler. Bam. Seconds later, I feel all right, I can breathe again, everything's cool. You can see the instant gratification seed being sown at an early age here. So that really, really, affected me. And when I finally, got a handle on my asthma, and I remember the first day I could leave my inhaler at home. It was one of the freest days of my life, and it was about 10 years ago. So anyhow, like I said, my head told me I needed more of everything, that nothing was going to be good enough for me. And as a result, the behaviors, that most alcoholics have really started to come out. And, honestly, by the 8th grade, I was full-blown alcoholic. I mean, the first time I drank, well, actually not the first time I drank, but my first drunk was in the 8th grade. And what did I drink? Everclear. Grain alcohol, man, right out of the chute, That's just how it was done in the South anyway. And so that's what I did. And it wasn't a good thing as far as like the feeling. I didn't have this drunk and all of a sudden life started happening. I had this drink and all of a sudden life got really dull and heavy and I felt this kind of weight and I really got kind of numbed out and I didn't really dig it and I got sick and I passed out in the whole nine. And the next day, actually not even probably the next day, but later on that night, I woke up and it wasn't, man, this really doesn't agree with me. I don't think I should really do this anymore. It was, I don't think I'm doing this right. I better figure out how to do it right so I can have all the fun that everybody else has. Behind that was I got to fit in with everybody else because I need that. And I chased it, for 5 more years. Drugs were a big part of my story. After the 9th grade, I got shipped off to a boarding school. Put a bunch of kids in the middle of nowhere with their parents' money, good things are going to happen for your kids, as far as addiction goes. I really kind of fine-tuned what I was doing with my alcoholism and my drug addiction there. I found out so I'm going to drink 2 of these, I'm going to smoke 1 of these, and maybe I'll eat a couple of those. And I found the balance. And honestly, for like 2 years, I had the balance and everything was cool. Except for a couple of times. But here was not my last drunk. My last drunk was actually pretty uneventful. But I'll give you a pretty eventful one. I got sent to summer camp and stuff like that when I was a kid. In my senior year of high school, this is probably 6 months before I get sober, I get a job at a mountaineering store. It's about halfway to the camp where I went. And the guys from the summer camp that were my counselors when I was a kid would come in to buy stuff. And, I was, again, needed to be liked, needed to be accepted, also needed to be the big shot. As a kid, I was a liar. I mean, a liar. My grandfather was a general in the Army. Right. I mean, just whatever I thought would impress you to make you like me, I was into. So these guys from the summer camp, the counselors come down, and I want to hang with them, and I want to impress them. And so after I get my first paycheck, I drove up to the camp, and they paid me in cash. And I drove up to the camp, and they weren't there. They had gone into Hendersonville, North Carolina. And so I went in and tried to find them. Didn't find them. So I started drinking. I got about an hour and 20-minute ride back to Greenville. And so I go to the store. I use my fake ID, buy some beer. I drink the beer on the way back to Greenville. I get to Greenville. I remember this band's playing at this place. I go in, start drinking there. I'll put it to you this way. By the end of the night, next time I woke up, it was about 5:30 in the morning. I was in the passenger seat of my car in the middle of this field that we all used to go to drink, like all my friends and stuff. And nobody else was there, but I was. And how the hell did I get in the passenger seat of my car? So I get in the driver's seat, I'm driving out, and then I go off in a ditch and I bottom out, and I'm like, oh God, so I have to, I had one of those Toyota station wagons that was also 4-wheel drive. You could probably pull this thing out of a ditch with a bike, but anyway, I had to put it in 4-wheel drive, and I got out and I got home. Next day, Mom comes up, yeah, you need to come out here, we got problems with the car. I think you got sick in it. Yeah, you're going to need to be taking care of that. So I went out there. I had weeds sticking out of the front from being in that field. I mean, it looked like it had been sitting in somebody's front yard and weeds growing out of the hood for 10 years. But so this was typical for me. There was nothing wrong with that at all. Maybe I took it a little too far, but it didn't really bother me. It bothered my parents. Shortly thereafter, I went to school. went to the University of North Carolina. Now I say that I went to school, that means I actually went to the city where the school was. Wasn't really in college, was kind of more at or around college. I think I went to 5 classes from the beginning of the semester until they asked me to leave at Thanksgiving. The dean had called and said, you know, we do this thing called freshman grade tracking, and you haven't been to class, and they take a couple points off your average every time you miss a class. And I said, yeah, but I haven't even taken exams. If I ace the exams, he goes, you're not even going to make a D if you ace it. You can get 1,000 on the exam, and you're still not going to have good enough grades to be here. So I had to make that fateful call. And that was, Dad, I just flunked out of college. That was not good for me. Not good for my dad either. But I remember that. I remember feeling so beaten, and that was the only time that I had utterly failed. I couldn't talk my way out of it. I couldn't, sidestep it. I couldn't scam it. It was done. I had failed. And again, I was waiting on that end exam just to skin of my teeth get by one more time. Didn't happen. So I remember going to my girlfriend's house at the time, and she opened the door, and she's like, what's the matter? And I just told her I'd failed out and just started bawling. And I went upstairs, and I'm staring at the ceiling, and I'm just looking up, and I'm like, God, just get me out of this. I don't know what I'm doing. Please just get me out of this. Now, I had no idea what I was really asking for, because a week later I was in treatment. So, not how I'd planned. I had planned on, okay, come back and do your thing, whatever. But I went home that week, and my father and my mom and I had a meeting. And my father was a stockbroker, completely by the numbers guy. Had it all laid out. He said, okay, son, here's what's going to happen. You're going to live at your mom's. You're going to get a job. Okay, now, you're going to make this amount, and these are your expenses. And he had them all listed, like car insurance, health insurance, food, gas, and this isn't including room and board because your mom's going to cut you a break. I mean, stuff like that. And he said, okay, now, you get a job, you're going to make this amount of money. Okay, so the way I look at it after all these expenses, you're about, I don't know, a couple $100 in the hole, and you haven't even eaten yet. He's got me completely pegged. And again, I'm 18 years old. To say that I have had issues with my father, understatement. And I look at him, and I'm just giving him all the 18-year-old attitude I can. And he just looks at me with all the compassion he could muster and just said, I mean, what's the matter with you? What is your problem? And I looked at him, and I went, what do you think it is? And he said, is it alcohol and drugs? And for the second time in my life, I said, yes, it is. The first time was when I was at boarding school, and I thought I was getting out of hand. I tried to quit on my own, not necessarily successful. So I copped to it. I said, yeah, it is. And from there, the conversation took a really serious turn. My dad was like, oh. He wasn't expecting that. He was expecting, no, you can't do anything for me. And he went, all right, well, look, we'll get you help. We'll do whatever, we need to do here, and, we'll get this taken care of. How did I respond? Nope, got it covered. I'll take care of it. Don't even worry about it. So obviously I'm doing so well, I just flunked out of college. So I spent the rest of the week getting loaded with my friends and, dodging the issue of, so when are you going back to school? Yeah, well, man, the parties up there are great, whatever. So Pop wanted me to meet with a family friend named Dr. Grimble, also known as George G. So, yeah, you know where this is going. So I go and I meet Dr. G, and he says, so tell me what's been going on. And I'm at his house, and I've, for some odd reason, found myself being completely honest with this guy and telling him everything, about the fraternity and about the parties and all this kind of stuff that I've been doing and not going to class and not giving a shit and everything else. And he said, you know what? Let's take a ride. Okay. And he took me to rehab. Now, mind you, what he did was he took me on a tour of the rehab. He didn't just pick me up and dump me off. He took me in there, and I met the head of the rehab, and during the course of our conversation, the head of the rehab looks at Dr. G, and he goes, so what do you think? And Dr. G goes, kind of took his hand and just slid it down like that. And I'm sitting over there, and I'm like, what's he saying? What does that mean? He says, son, it means that he thinks you've bottomed out, and we both think you're ready to make a change. What does bottomed out mean? Means you really, you're at a point where you're ready to make a change. You probably couldn't get that much lower than how you are right now, even though you won't admit it. And I was like, I don't know what y'all are talking about. I feel fine. I don't need to be here. So anyway, Dr. Grimble's taking me home, and he asked me, he said, so what do you think of that place? I said, I think that place is great for people that need it. But, I'm not one of those people. I've got this thing taken care of. I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to just stay off the shit and not worry about it. I said, what do you think of that? And he said, you can't do it, son. And I'm like, how the hell do you know? Who are you to tell me what I can and cannot do? I haven't seen you in 20 years, and you're here telling me this kind of thing. Well, not 20 because I was only 18, but you get the point. And he said, I know you can't do it because I couldn't do it. Doc had probably 27 years at that point, I think. And, I went, well, again, remember, I'm 18. Well, that's too bad for you. So I got this. So I go home. I spent the rest of that day getting loaded. Imagine that. And I get home that afternoon, basically just to eat and then go back out and continue getting loaded. And my mom says, your dad's on the phone, wants to talk to you. So I said, okay. So I get on the phone and we have this conversation. He says, son, talk to Dr. Grimble. Understand you went by the rehab center today. Well, you're going to go there tomorrow. Well, no, I'm not. Well, yes, you are. You know how this goes. So during the course of this conversation, Pop says this to me. He says, look, son, we think you need to go. Dr. Grimble thinks you need to go. And you know you need to go. So why don't you just go? And he had me. Because deep down, I knew I needed some help. And I knew that I needed to go to this place. So I said, okay. And then he said, well, it's not going to do you any good to go out and get ape shit tonight, so just chill out. And I said, because I knew, man, I really did. I had friends that had gone to rehab, and they came out and they never did anything again. And I was like, no, this is my last night. I'm going out with a bang. So, like I said, it was pretty uneventful. I mean, I drank like a half a fifth of Jack, and I threw up behind the dumpster, and, typical fanfare for us. So the next day I went in. Honestly, I fought it tooth and nail for the first 3 days. And then me and my counselor got into it. He asked me what I wanted to do when I got out. And I told him everything I wanted to do. I want to go back to school. I want to be in the fraternity. I want to be in this band that we were going to get going together and all this kind of stuff. And he just looked at me and shook his head. And he goes, you can't do any of that stuff. And I went, the hell are you talking about, man? You just asked me what I wanted to do, and I'm telling you, now you're just going to chop me down? Basically, I told him where he could go and what he could do when he got there. And I left the room, and I called everybody I could think of to come and get me out of that rehab. I called my dad. I called my mom. I called my best friend's mom. I called my best friend's dad. And everybody went, sorry, kid, best place for you right now. And I'm so grateful that they didn't come to my rescue, because about an hour later, I'm in this room, and I'm just livid, and I'm so mad, and I'm just so pissed off, and everybody is against me, and everybody hates me, and then it happened. The moment of clarity, the surrender, it came to me like this. It was, I just had this thought from out of nowhere. Bogie, these people all say they want to help you. That's all they're trying to do. You've been fighting this whole thing for this kind of life that you have that has gotten you nowhere. These people say they want to help you. Why don't you just let them help you and see what happens? And from then on, guys, I got to tell you, it's been different. So in that, the obsession to drink and use, not there anymore. It was different. And basically, it grew from there. That was my moment of clarity, my spiritual awakening. Call it what you will. That was the point at which, to me, that I surrendered and said, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm going to try and get some help. Now, from there, funny enough, I went back to college. I got in that fraternity. I got in that band. I got all this kind of stuff going on, and I stayed sober. Now, again, didn't like what the guy did to me. Said, what do you want to do? Okay, you can't do any of that. What he meant, honestly, and this came to me as I was speaking about 5 years ago. I went, oh my God, I finally get what the guy meant. He meant you cannot do that stuff unless you make sobriety your number one priority. But what I heard was you can't do it. And that, being the alcoholic that I am, really ticked me off and maybe, kind of butt heads. But that's what he meant. I got to make this my life and this my core, and then I might get all that stuff if I really want it. And that's what happened for me. I went back. I went to 2 meetings a day for the first probably 3.5 years. I needed that. I needed that structure. I needed that constant reminder every day at lunch, every day at 8 o'clock, because my band would go and we would play at all these fraternity parties. Need I remind you, what happens at fraternity parties? It's like kegs and liquor and drugs and all kinds of stuff. And everybody knew what I'd gone through. And honestly, a lot of my friends that were there when I was drinking remained my friends when I got sober. They were there for me. They understood. They never pushed me to get back into anything. They said, yeah, actually, we're kind of glad that you aren't doing that shit anymore. To this day, my 4 best friends when I went into treatment are still my 4 best friends today. 2 of them stood up at my wedding. I stood up at one of theirs. It's a really beautiful thing, because had I not gotten this, I probably wouldn't have been there for them. They probably wouldn't have been able to be there for me because I either wouldn't be here or I would have shoved them out of my life somehow. So anyway, working the steps was a priority for me right when I came in, because I wanted what people in here had. Funniest thing that happened to me when I went to a meeting in Greenville right after treatment was I walked in and everybody, I was 18. People were like probably anywhere from 35 to 70, but it was all my parents' friends. That guy, I went hunting with him and my dad. Wait a minute, that's my across the street neighbor. And there's my best friend's mom. All this kind of stuff. Who wouldn't pick me up from rehab? Damn you. So anyway, there they are. And the love and compassion that they showed me, I was scared to death. I had no idea what was going to be in store for me. And the love and compassion that they showed me, they didn't treat me like a kid. They treated me like a fellow alcoholic. They treated me as somebody that needed some help and some compassion. And that's what I got. And so that's what I try to give to the new guys when I'm here. So working the steps, I'll tell you how I got my first sponsor. I had seen this guy a couple times in meetings. I went to another meeting. He was one of the few guys I knew. I didn't like him. He had made some smart-ass comment in this other meeting, and I was like, man, who the hell's that guy? Well, that guy ends up coming up to me at this other meeting. Hey, man, how you doing? I'm like, I'm pretty good. He goes, you got a sponsor? I froze. I didn't have a sponsor yet. And I went, you be my sponsor? And he goes, yeah. Willie's one of my best friends today. Took me through the steps. I did my first 4-step at 90 days. I moved back to North Carolina to go back to school at about 5 months. I got another sponsor up there who the steps were a big priority for him. And, I did another 4-step. And I probably did a 4-step every 6 to 8 months for the first few years because, guys, I had a lot of stuff to clean up, And I wasn't going to get it all in the first shot, At 10 years of sobriety, I'm taking a shower, I'm washing my hair, and it comes to me, wow, back when I was drinking, I had a falling out with this guy, and I always blamed it on him. But actually, it was my drinking that pushed this guy out of my life. So at 10 years of sobriety, I called this dude up and said, Tommy, man, I'm really sorry that our friendship went south. I realize it's my fault. And it cost us our friendship, and I'm really sorry. And he was very, gracious about it. He said, look, man, that was 10 years ago. I know what you're going through, and everything's cool now. But to get that out of me, to clear that up was such a gift. And that's what steps 4 through 10 have really been for me. And so I try and work those as best I can. I do a 4-step on a fairly regular basis. Now it's like every year or two. But for the first little while, I had to keep doing them and just, get what I could and get rid of it. And I learned a lot about myself doing that. I learned what makes me tick. Fear made me tick for the longest time. And until I really got in touch with that and embraced that fact instead of running from it, I was ruled by it. And I can still be that guy today. I mean, look, I've still got alcoholism. It's active in my life. It's active in my brain, and if I don't come here and treat it and practice these principles when I'm out in the world, I still have it. I get reminders, of how serious this thing is. Just kind of a side note to check in right now, just for me. I've been home off the road for about 3 weeks, and I'm leaving again on Friday, and I'm just now kind of starting to be like, I'm home off the road. Now I got to get up and go again. But I realized last night, and I say this, I'll say it and then I'll tell you why. I've had a couple of sponsees in this program go out and die. As, fairly new guys, and one got a year and went back out and didn't make it. And it was a year ago this week, I think, that this little kid, David, did that. And I don't say that to scare you if you're new. I tell you that because, honestly, if you think nobody cares, you are wrong. We care here. You affect people with who you are. And when you come in and you're trying to get this thing, people love you, man, and they learn to do that by coming in and sticking around. So please stay, because it hurt me so bad when he went out. And I got that call, and they took him off life support. It was so heavy. And, the thing was, he had it. My wife gave him his first cake. It was amazing. And he wanted to be in the music business, and he wanted to live in Hollywood, and he wanted to do all this stuff. Well, guess what? He was in the music business. He was living in Hollywood. He was in a band. He was doing what he always wanted to do. But the disease wouldn't let him go, wouldn't let him realize that. I'm very, very fortunate that I've been able to realize that, and I've been able to realize what a gift I have with the life I've been given here. And it starts every time I come to a meeting, every time I wake up and I thank God for my life today. And, in my prayer in the mornings, I thank God for the things in my life that I have, and I list them out. And, my sobriety, my marriage, my health, things like that. And then I say, I surrender this to you. And then I say this, because I trust you completely. Because it reminds me, I'm not saying I trust him completely all the time. Please, come on. But it's a reminder to me that I can trust him completely. And when I do that, how much better off I feel about my life and who I am. And so that's really the main core of my prayer is the surrender to the trust and the protection and care, And then I ask for the knowledge of His will and power to carry it out. And I ask to be loving, respectful, compassionate, and positive, because those are the things that when I got here I needed most. I needed love, I needed respect, I needed compassion, and I needed a positive environment. And so I try and be that in my life, not just in here, but out there as well. And when I focus on that, my life is wonderful. When I focus on that alcoholic, negative crap that we all have going around in our heads, my life is full of problems. And we moved about 2 weeks ago, and I was able to hire movers this time. I told my dad that, and he started laughing. He goes, "Yeah, my first goal when I got steadily employed was not cut the grass." He said, "It took me 4 years, but I don't cut that shit anymore." I hired movers and everything, and so we're we're largely in boxes still, and, I've been very busy. I've been working, and so is my wife. And, sometimes I wake up and I'm on, there's boxes here, and I don't know where everything is and all this kind of stuff. And then I'm like, wait, I moved because it was a better place. I moved because it was a bigger place, And, I was able to hire movers, I got to embrace that. I got to be grateful for it, And when I do that, I go, oh, yeah. And then the boxes, look, they still matter. I still want to get out of them, telling you this. That's my wife right there in the front row. Thank you. But I can't get bogged down in that. I have to understand it's a process. It's like being sober. It's a process. Anyway, my journey in sobriety led me through, a lot of different musical situations and stuff like that. And I've learned so much through doing that. And I moved out here because I wanted to get better as a musician. And I went to a music school and I studied with some really great teachers and met some wonderful friends there. And the first thing I did when I moved to LA, because I knew 0 people. Actually, got to be honest, I knew 1 person. So in the program. And it was the greatest thing in the world. I came out here, I called the hotline, I got a meeting directory, and all of a sudden, here you guys are, And it's the same for me when I'm on the road, wherever I am. I've been to meetings. I went to a meeting in Akron, Ohio, birthplace of AA, right? So the meeting was at 3600 Market Street. I was at, I think, 2000 Market Street or something like that. Remember, Akron, Ohio. So I'm thinking 12, 15 blocks. Akron, Ohio. No, big yards, big houses, big blocks. 16 years of sobriety, walking uphill a mile to get to the meeting. But I got there, and it was a slamming meeting. The sobriety was great. I didn't care that I'd walked. I did get a ride home. From a very generous alcoholic that said, you walked this far? Man, that's any lengths. And I was like, I got to go here, because I do. I need it so badly, especially being out there. I'm kind of the Lone Ranger of sobriety on the bus. There's nobody else sober on the bus. And so, no Tano, no Silver, just, the masked man here. So, I've got to get out and I've got to do it. I have phone numbers. Again, Dave, I want to thank you for asking me to speak. Dave has saved my butt many times with these CDs because I have them all on my iPod and I can dial up a meeting whenever I want, and just sit down for an hour, get the message, and be cool. It's a really, really great gift. Now, since I've been to a bunch of different places a few different times, I've been to meetings in Europe, I go in Amsterdam, I go in Zurich, and I know people there, and they know me there. And I walk in, and they're like, oh, you're back in town to play. It's the best feeling in the world, because I walk in here, and you guys get it, and they get it. And I can talk about anything, and they get it. And it's so wonderful. I can speak that language of the heart that the guys on the bus aren't really going to understand. But again, it's that love, respect, and compassion that I try to bring to my life that I get back from you guys, and that's really what has helped heal me, in so many instances. Again, Dave, thank you so much for having me here, and thank you guys for being here. I'm really grateful.